Hello friends. Well, I'm finally going to shoot and post this video on Philippians chapter 4 verses 4 through 9. I'm sorry that I'm so late in posting this. For the last several days, Becky and I have been trying to close her mother's apartment in Springfield, Missouri and prepare for her move to Colorado. She's only going to be, she'll be very close to us in Colorado, so we're happy that she can be close to us. Anyway, I want to share just a few thoughts with you from this passage. I hope you have just a few minutes to spare that you can consider them with me. First, I think what I'd like to do is just reread this beautiful passage because it's one of the most lovely and practical passages in all of Paul's literature. Let's start with verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Don't worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. Verses 4 through 7. This is a call to Christian piety. Paul is concerned, as always, about ethics, about Christian behavior. Here is how we respond to the grace of God. And you'll notice in these verses that here is what identifies Pauline spirituality. Here are the marks that characterize a spiritual person: joy, prayer, thanksgiving, peace. Now, this joy is not the kind that comes and goes with certain circumstances, but it is the kind of joy that is predicated upon a relationship with the Lord. Prayer. Paul says, don't be anxious, rather pray. Let God know what you need. Ask Him for your help. Thanksgiving. This is important to Paul, isn't it? That we become thankful people. And peace. The peace of God, such a wonderful gift. It's a garrison or a guard for our hearts. Now, such lives are further marked by gentleness and by no anxiety. So you think about these characteristics of the Christian life: joy, prayer, thanksgiving, peace, gentleness, and no anxiety. If you think about those, you might wonder, how in the world can anyone reach the point that they live this way, that they have this kind of lifestyle, that they can be known as these kind of people? And I think the key is found in verse 5. In this phrase and in these words, the Lord is near. Because the Lord is near, we can become people who are known by the peace of God and who are known as joyful people and thankful people and people who are controlled by the peace of God, and even people who don't worry about anything but instead pray to God and ask Him for what they need. It's the fact that the Lord is near. And it's understanding that fact that makes all the difference. Now, the Lord is near. Does that phrase refer to what precedes it or what follows it? I'm not sure. And about that phrase, is Paul talking about the ever-presence of the Lord, that He is always close at hand? Or is he referring to the fact that the Lord's return is imminent? Again, I'm not sure what he's referring to. But I like to think about all of those things, that because the Lord is near, that makes it possible to do as Paul commands and to do as he teaches. And then in verses 8 and 9, there is a call to wisdom. And Paul, as you noticed, outlines several virtues that should characterize the Christian. By the way, this is Hellenistic moralism at its best. These virtues were valued and prized in the Greco-Roman society of which the Philippians were a part, and they surely knew from their youth that these were virtues that their culture had valued. And Paul says, I want you to think on these things. But I look in my English translation, and I have this footnote that in the Greek, the meaning is take account of these things. And so it probably is that Paul is not saying so much that we ought to think on these things or think about these virtues, but that we ought to take account of them. That is, we want these virtues to characterize the way that we live. They should characterize our behavior. Again, Paul is talking about ethics, and the context seems to bring out this meaning. For in verse 9, Paul says, keep on doing the things that you've heard and seen and received and learned from me. Keep on doing these things. Paul is concerned about how we live. Now, can we talk just a moment about application? This is such a beautiful passage. And if we take it to heart, we will become people who are more joyful, more prayerful, people who don't worry, people who are more thankful, people who are prayerful, and people in whom the peace of God is evident. Now, as you know from your reading and study of the book of Philippians, Paul's main concern is the progress and advance of the gospel. He wants Christ to be glorified. And it seems to me that one of the touchstones of this entire book is our witness, is evangelism. Paul wants us to make a difference in the world for Christ. And how do we do that? We do that, according to this passage, by being joyful and gentle, by being prayerful and thankful, by not having anxiety about anything, but as being controlled and dominated by the peace of God. And you know something? People who are described this way will be noticed. If we are this way, people are going to wonder, how is it that you are this way? And then our task simply becomes to point them to the source of this kind of lifestyle. Maybe evangelism is just that easy. Maybe it's all about becoming a person, as Paul describes here, and then when people notice the way we live, we point them to God and we say, here is how we can avoid anxiety and be at peace. Here is how we are full of joy and thankful. It's because God is in our lives. Well, something to think about. Well, I have one more video for you. I hope to shoot it and post it on Friday of this week. And of course, it'll be a discussion of the last part of this chapter, Paul's closing remarks, in which he practices what he preaches, because he's going to say thank you in these verses, isn't he? Thank you, Philippians, for your support and your partnership in the gospel. By the way, I mentioned recently that as we close this study on December the 3rd, we're going to take about a 3-week hiatus, and then we're going to begin a study of the book of James on the very first day of 2018. And I hope even now you are planning to join us for that great study in the book of James. May God bless you this week, and I'll see you in a few days.